Guys, I've never done this before, so I'm kind of new at it, but I felt led to make this video. Today is what I call my victory day. It's 1 year since my life dramatically changed. So I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory so that you kind of see what's going on. As a child, I had some things happen to me that were very traumatic. I'm not going to go into them, but it was very traumatic, and it did not involve my parents. So if any of my family's looking at this, it's not them. Anyway, through the years, it affected decisions that I made as a teenager, and just all through my life. And I ended up developing post-traumatic stress disorder because of it. I got to the point where I couldn't see anyone to touch me or hug me, or, and it would come on and off and on and throughout my life. And about 2001, things just really came to a head. And I was on active duty in the Navy, and things just really fell apart. I was not only having the post-traumatic stress disorders with the night terrors and all kinds of bad things, but I was also diagnosed with severe bipolar type 1 with psychotic features. And for those of you that aren't sure about what bipolar really is, it's your moods are just basically, it's like somebody has a clicker and just keeps flicking the channels, and your moods are in and out and in and out. You're depressed, you're happy, you're like really super hyped up, or and the bad thing is, which I always kind of liked my manic days, because I could really get a lot done. You can't sleep, you just, your mind's just racing 100 different directions. But and I would tend to actually get done. In fact, just last year I used to make quilts, and within 1 week on a manic episode, I actually made 10 quilts, from cutting them out, piecing them, and getting them ready to go to the quilter in a week. So that just kind of gives you an idea. And you always have to worry about, you get this euphoria, and like you want to spend money that you don't have and things like that. So it's a nightmare, and little things can set off a mood. It's just a vicious cycle. So since 2001, I was retired from the military because of it, and unable to work, and it was just a nightmare. And, in the process, I would have periods of depression where I actually ended up having to have some ECTs, which are shock treatments. And really nothing really helped. I was having all kinds of medicine. Some stuff I'd be on like 5 or 6 different things. And, and towards the end here, I developed tardive dyskinesia, which is basically twitches and things like that. And I developed essential tremors, which is like I have to watch when I carry things, because my hand will just start shaking and open up and drop whatever I'm doing. I've hit my phone in my face a lot of times. And it's caused memory and cognitive issues, so I have to deal with that. Which makes it so I'm unable to quilt anymore. But anyway, that just kind of gives you, I was in and out of hospitals. I developed a self-harm issues where I would make a lot of cuts on my arm. And I know there's people out here who's like, cannot understand why people cut when we're really not having a good day. And just to give you a little quick rundown, it's basically it makes us feel better because in that moment, the pain from the cut actually kind of focuses us a little bit, and it makes us feel like we at least have a little control for that moment. I'm not advocating cutting at all. It's a very bad thing to be doing, and if that's something that you do, you should really seek help because it can be dangerous. Anyway, so I was in and out of the hospitals and things throughout my time, and I gained all kinds of weight. I would lose it, and then I'd gain it all back, and there are so many meds I've been on and been there, try that, and didn't work. So it's kind of miserable, However, this last year things just really came to a head, and in August I was Baker acted, and for 3 or 4 days, and then in September on the 2nd, actually it was the 1st, and then I had to go to the hospital after that. But September, before that, things were just like, I was just like constantly cycling, my mind was just going from one extreme to the other. And the bad thing with bipolar is, mania is kind of the good mania anyway, which is where you're just so creative and you just feel like, wow, but the bad part about that is this, you got that, but then, hang on to your hat, because right behind it is the complete opposite extreme to where you don't want to get out of bed. And I know there are people out here that know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a struggle. You never know you could wake up feeling okay, and then something throughout the day will trigger, and you'll just, you have to maintain a good bedtime. You have to maintain it. It's basically, you need a schedule. And you got to watch trying to do too much at one time. And then I would start like a lot of projects and like not finish any of them. So anyway, fast forward to September 3rd. I had been placed in the psych ward in Memorial Hospital the day before, and for evaluation. What I had done is, through that last like 4 or 5 months, I had just been really struggling, really having a hard time just staying, working, and going. And so September 1st, I went to the doctor, and they were like, well, we can't help you. You need to go to your psychiatrist. And my psychiatrist was like, oh, well, they weren't answering the phones, and they were saying they were closed, and I couldn't leave a message. And I had been trying for a while, and I just finally, I snapped. I walked out of the doctor's office, didn't even check out. And I had a deliberate plan that I was going to go and get some alcohol and just drink it. My intention was not to hurt myself or inadvertently, kill myself. That was not it. I was just, my nerves were so exposed that I couldn't, and that was just like the last straw for me. So I went to the store and I bought a 5th of Jack Daniel's Fireball whiskey. I'm sure some of you are all out there going, oh, I don't recommend it. But anyway, I, in a 20-minute period, proceeded to drink the entire bottle. And at the last minute realized, oh my goodness, what did I do? And I was trying to call 911, and I had cut myself on both my wrists. I mean, I take a knife and you make a little superficial cut. It's not like I cut my wrist, I slit them. But anyway, it just happened that a dear friend of mine from church, Pat, had really, she just didn't feel like something was right. And so she came, and she had the combination to my house. And she came, and it was a good thing that she did, because had she not, I probably wouldn't be here today. I was talking to 911, and she had just gotten in there, and all of a sudden the alcohol hit my system, and I just passed out. Couldn't talk to 911. And Pat was a nurse. She's a nurse, and she actually saved my life, because I had stopped breathing, and she was pulling me in the process down to the floor to do CPR, and it was enough to rouse me to where I threw up some of the whiskey. And she was talking to 911, and then they came, and I don't really remember much of anything except waking up at about 7. Well, I do remember a little bit of being in the emergency room, and them trying to, talking about intubation, and trying to get a line in. I could feel them kind of with the veins in my neck and things like that, and trying to stick something in my mouth, but that's it. And I realized that, I almost really messed up without really even meaning to. But when you're really struggling, it's hard, and I know it's frustrating for those of you who are caregivers for people with, like me, or schizophrenia, or deep depression, or, it's hard. But luckily for me, it had a happy ending, because I woke up with one of the worst hangovers I ever had. I can't even stand the thought of cinnamon anything anymore. But, and before this, I had kept saying that, I always wanted to be close to God, and, and really struggling, why am I not having this? I was comparing myself to other Christians, or people that I felt were, doing what I wanted. And so that kind of was in there too. And then, of course, I had this little voice in my head telling me, you're nothing. You're not good for anything. Why are you even taking up space? God doesn't want you. He doesn't hear you. He is not hearing you. He doesn't want you. He doesn't care about you. You are nothing. You just need to just go ahead and die. And I mean, the litany goes on, and but y'all get the idea. So it was kind of like the perfect storm, all kind of came at the same time. And I just didn't feel like I was getting anywhere with God. I'd gone to my pastor, and I had asked for prayer, different things, and just never really was satisfied. So my husband had brought me my Bible when I was in the hospital, and it was over a weekend, so of course I couldn't get any medicine for anything until I had seen a doctor, and they didn't work weekends. So I was sitting there, and I was just really struggling the next day, and feeling alone and anxious and scared, and just, and I pulled out my Bible. And I just opened it up to Psalms, because, Psalms are very encouraging. They're very comforting. And I just started reading it loud. And when I did that, one of the techs came by and was doing room checks and said, what are you doing? And I told him, I was, I'm reading the Word. And, and he said, well, and he gave me 2 scriptures to read. And I read them. And I don't remember the exact ones, but one was about how, that because, when you're in that situation, we beat ourselves up. Y'all have no idea that on the outside, we really, really beat ourselves up. Like, and it just makes us feel even worse. So, if you ever encounter someone, don't read them the riot act. Because trust me, we are already beating ourselves up. But anyway, so I read these scriptures, and one of them was about, that that nobody is better, that everybody, we weigh out in the same scale and things like that. But I have them marked in my Bible. But that day actually was the game changer, because the jitteriness and the anxiety and the condemnation and all of that went away. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I felt peace. And and see what happened there was I made the step that God was waiting for, and He ran and met me the rest of the way. In the Bible, the story of the prodigal son. It's in the Gospels, but it's the father. The son had gone out and just did everything, destroyed his money, had ended up with nothing, and was reduced to eating food that was meant for the pigs. And he thought, well, I'm going to go home, but he was going as a servant because he didn't feel like he was worthy. Sound familiar? So, but when he was a little bit far off, his father saw him. And his father ran and embraced him and said he loved him. And he ordered that he be dressed in the finest robe. And I'm telling you, this son did everything that you could think of. He ended up with nothing. And his father took him back, ordered a feast to be prepared, and celebrated. And that's how our Savior is. When we make that one step, whether we're coming for the first time or we're just kind of coming back and rededicating ourselves to Him and telling Him, Lord, take the driver's seat. There's a celebration that goes on in heaven. It's in the Word. I believe it's Luke. My grandpa used to tell me that too, that, everybody celebrates so much in heaven when a lost one comes home or comes back. But, and then a few days after I got out, there was our first church service, and I was so grateful to go back to church. And that night is ironic because we were getting ready to get hit with Irma. And Pastor had talked about the 4 storms and how Jesus is always there and He will calm the storms, and that He is in our boat. He is in our boat always. That His children never face a storm alone. And that was just the beginning of something that has blossomed in this last month, last year. He has really, really moved in me. And I used to always compare myself to other Christians and be like, I want what they have. But I realized that I had never really truly given 100% of myself to God. I'd be like, oh, well, go to church because, well, Christians go to church. Oh, well, I got to read the Bible because Christians read the Bible. If this sounds familiar, ask God to take over and just give you a new fire and desire for Him. Because when I finally gave Him everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, He wants it all. I started having the relationship that other people had. And we shouldn't compare ourselves to other Christians because everybody's walk is unique to them and God. We're not all the same. Now, there are the same things that, God heals us and, but we all have different purposes and no one is more important than anybody else. The enemy will try to make you feel that way, but we are all as important to the body as anybody else. In fact, it says in the Bible when it talks about, spiritual gifts, that there is not one gift more important than the other because they all have a purpose and they all are needed in the kingdom. So, if you ever feel like you're not doing anything for the church, or you'd be surprised to see what other people think. But I digress. Remember those things I told you that had caused the PTSD? I had a dream and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then just one day it just snapped in there and I'm like, oh, it was Him telling me it was time to let that go. And yes, I worked in therapy, and therapy will only work. I highly recommend therapy, but it will only work if you are willing and truly in your heart ready to face the things that are really there and that your perceptions of yourself that you have built. Because see, I had forgiven my people, but I never really let myself off the hook. And in this situation, it was not my fault. I was a victim. But somehow I had taken it on of, why me? What did I do? What did I do that caused this to happen to me? And that's what I call stinking thinking. And everybody has done it. That's what, we hear a lot in our support groups, but stinking thinking really will get you in a bad place. And it's not productive of any way, shape, or form. But, so I would go in my room in my prayer room, and I shut the door and I just picture those people in front of me and I just let them have it. And then I truly faced that I was blameless, and I let myself off the hook on that too. It didn't happen overnight. It happened about a month or so, and a couple of months, just really, to just continue to let it out like a balloon. You're letting air out of a balloon. And there, when I would be sobbing my heart out, I could just feel this warm softness envelop me, and I knew that my Lord was there with me. And when I let Him help me let go, it was like a weight was lifted. I just had this rock that I've been carrying was gone. A lot of, I know everybody hears about forgiveness and we need to forgive each other and things like that. And the reason we do that is because when we hold unforgiveness for something that other people have done to us, whether it be very severe or just, that they really hurt us, when we hold on to those feelings, we're giving them the power to continue to hurt us the rest of our lives. I think that's why God has always asked, forgive that person, forgive your brother, so that we can just let it go and move on. It's not to let them off the hook and things like that. It's not. And I'm not saying by any means that it's easy, because it's not. But when you do, the reward is so much greater. It is. And it's not something that you'll ever forget. I mean, in the back of your mind, it's there, but the hurt is gone. The wound is healed. It's not seeping and gaping and infected anymore. It turns into a scar. And you know something I've learned, just like the scars on my arm where I cut, when I look at them, I see where, you know what, I have been through fire, I have been through hell and back, but then I look and I say, I'm still standing. By the grace of God, I am still standing. I'm a little battle weary sometimes, but I'm here. And you know, the best thing about what God does is that He takes the bad things that happen, or the bad decisions that we make and that we just feel horrible about, and He turns them into something greater. I used to pray that, for God to make my scars go away on my arms. And then just one day I realized that they're a part of who I am. And someday I may encounter someone just like He encountered Thomas, that they doubt that I've really been there. And I can show them, just like Jesus showed him His hands. When you think about Jesus' ministry, when He came to earth, He was God here on earth. I mean, He was in the form of man, but He was still God. But He could have chose to use the Pharisees and the people in the temple, but who did He choose? He chose fishermen, tax collectors, doctors, everyday people. One of His people that helped with the ministry she had committed adultery. And it would have been a whole lot easier if He had have picked the Pharisees and stuff, but He chose the regular people and the people from less desirable places to show that we are all welcome and that we are all equal in God's eyes. God is no respecter of persons. You can look in the Bible and see that. He doesn't hold one person over another. The same salvation that is offered to a rich man or a Christian is the same one that He will offer to a drug addict, an alcoholic, a mentally ill, a thief. It's the same. He loves us all the same. And today I look back and I see where He has brought me. Back in September, I really didn't know much about the Bible because, when I would try to read it, it just didn't connect to me. Well, and two, I was trying to read it King James, which it's kind of hard to read if you've read one. It's, for some of us, it's like, what are they saying? And that wonderful woman, Pat, she helped me find a version that I could understand. in a study Bible, and she showed me how to study. And now the things that I know, I never dreamed I would. And when I gave my heart fully to the Lord and just allowed Him to start changing things, I got the relationship that I desired. You know, we tend to be hard on each other and ourselves, but God loves us. We just need to take a step toward Him, because He will never force Himself on us. He's not that kind of a God. If we come, it has to be on our choosing. We have to make a step, but when we make a step by opening a Bible, we're just simply saying, Lord, it gets His attention, and He comes running. And you know, whether you have never given your life to God, or you have wandered away, He still wants you. He loves you. And He wants, He wants you, whoever you are. We can't hide anything from God. He knows everything about us, our thoughts, everything. But He doesn't care. Because He loves us. He gave His Son for us so that we could live. Whether it be the sinner or someone who's wandered away. You know, if you ever heard the story about the 99 sheep, the master left the one to go find the other one that was lost. That's what He does. He never gives up. And He doesn't expect us to be perfect. Even as Christians, we can stumble from time to time, but His grace never ends. It is always there for the asking. So, as I celebrate today, and I look back on what He has done for me and where He has brought me, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. But I look back, and in this last year, He has brought me knowledge of the Bible that I would have never thought. I used to be afraid to pray in front of people. I wouldn't even pray with my mother-in-law over lunch, just her and I. I was kind of timid. But He took a kitten and He made a lion out of me. I will pray now. I pray all the time, in front of people, in my room, wherever. And I see things through His eyes now, and the beauty that is around me. And if this sounds like something that you're looking for, make a move. You won't regret it. God bless.